take you back to your occupation before you resign. I mean, for Sim Ann and Chun Sing, and of course, Mr. Ang, you are still with SBS. You know, the kind of issues which opposition parties may bring up. In the case of Sim Ann, challenges of the immigration policy, how would you respond to it? That, reduce the number of foreign talent coming to Singapore. The opposition raises that. The case of Mr. Ang, cut down or bring down bus fares and train fares in the case of SBS Transit. How would you respond to that? And to Chun Sing, slash the defense budget in Singapore and give that money back to the needy. Can I get your response to how you would respond to those kind of issues in respect to what you were doing before, what you're still doing? Thank you.
Thank you. First, I would like to say that I have never liked the term foreign talent because it seems to connote that talent has to come from elsewhere. I believe in the opposite. I think Singapore has a lot of talent. The key, though, is that in order to maintain and sustain a very dynamic economy, I think we could always do with more. And I think that is really the principle underpinning our principles, our policies for population and immigration. My personal view on bringing in immigrants as well as foreign manpower is this. I think they have a very useful role to play in the economy. But I think the pace of intake cannot be too fast. And indeed, I think the government is also of this view. So if you look at what has happened to the rate of intake for new immigrants, especially in the last 1.5 to 2 years, I think the pace has been tightened quite considerably. And if you look at the measures for controlling the inflow of foreign manpower, more stringent measures have been announced and also are being implemented.
Wayne?
Yeah. Well, I think that's right.
Okay.
The bus fare and the train fare is determined by Public Transport Council. And Public Transport Council comprise people from all walks of life, from unionists, from grassroots, from LTA, from professional bodies, some accountants, and some academics, transport academics. So they're the ones to look at the accounts of the public transport operators, and because they are being public listed company, they need to make some decent profit, not too much. They scrutinize it very carefully. So we all like to have lower fare for all the citizens, but Chinese has a saying, 羊毛出在羊身上. So if you lower the fares and it doesn't cover the operation cost, then we need to have some subsidies. And who will pay for them? In other countries whereby the transport services are provided by the state and there were a lot of subsidies, they couldn't even cover maybe 67% of the operating costs. So we have to ask ourselves, is this system that we have, are we happy with it? Based on the demand that we are now providing the service according to the demand pattern as far as we can, and Public Transport Council also set a very strict quality of service for the transport operator to adhere to. So I think it's balanced. Thank you.
Chun Sing?
I will just make 3 points in response. It is always very sexy to say that we don't need to take care of our defense because we live in peace. Let me ask, in the history of Southeast Asia in the last 500 years, which country the size of Singapore, the composition like Singapore, that have survived more than 100 years? The answer is none. We are 45 years old. Will we beat the odds of history? We don't know, but we will try. As the Chinese saying goes, 居安思危. When we live in peace, we must always be prepared and never take for granted the peace that we have. The circumstances around the world, around our regions, are turbulent. We should not take it for granted just because we have seemingly peace in our midst. In my short time with the SAF in the last 20 years, there were many occasions where we have to stand our ground and stare down the competition in order for us to have the space to be called Singaporeans. So I do not think that we should take this lightly. The second point I'd like to make, again I start from a Chinese saying, 10年树木, 百年树人. It takes 10 years to grow a tree. It takes 100 years to develop a person. Building the SAF is a long-term process. It takes us 10, 20, 30 years to build up a SAF of what we have today. It takes 1 minute for other people who wish us ill to get angry with us and to threaten us. That is the difference. Things can just turn, and we have seen it turn in the history before. So we built a strong SAF with steady investment. We don't go up and down on a feast and famine strategy. We spend what we need, and we are responsible to the nation for every single cent that we spend, to make sure that we do justice to the hard-earned money that we have invested in the defense and security of our country. And finally, if you ask any of the NS men that dutifully come back for their in-camp every year, they know what they are going through. They know what they are up against. It will be a great injustice to think that they come back and maybe, as some people say, masak-masak, and that they are not doing anything serious. So I think we owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our nation to make sure that we do not get carried away by these populist sentiments. Defense is a long-term business. It is not a short-term business, and we must take it as seriously as we can. Going forward, our challenge is to make sure that we can continue to socialize and to share with our people the challenges in our security environment. Not all of this can be discussed openly in public, but to the extent that we can, like myself personally, I would share with my fellow commanders. And I'm proud to say that after they know what are the challenges facing our country always, they have never flinched from this. And they have never think that we will always be around without any effort.